Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. I hope you're having a fantastic day so far. My day is going pretty good. I cannot complain. Actually, I can complain. I'm going to complain about something, and that is traffic. I nipped out to quickly grab a new set of headphones because the ones I've been using, my son's ones, finally gave up the ghost and sort of stopped working. They didn't stop working, they just wouldn't, the volume wouldn't change, and it was really quiet. So I had to quickly nip out and get some. The shop I went to is it's exactly 3.8 kilometers from my front door. Took me an hour to get there and back. It's a freaking nightmare at the moment because they're building a new motorway, summer holidays, and it's just so much traffic. So that brings me to today's video, the most remote place in America, Midway Atoll. I've never even heard of it. It popped up. I thought, I love secluded places, so I have to check it out. Now, I don't know. Let me know down in the comments. Have you ever heard of Midway Atoll? I'm presuming, judging by the map that I'm looking at now, it's somewhere near Hawaii. Maybe. I might be wrong. But yeah, we're going to be checking that out. So, if you haven't done so already, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. It gives me that warm, fuzzy feeling inside. And without further ado, let's check out the most remote place in America, Midway Atoll.
Hawaii is way out there, 2,300 miles into the Pacific Ocean from the continental U.S. But 1,300 miles past the state is an American island cluster nearly unknown outside of one battle in World War II. Midway Atoll is a ring of small volcanic islands that barely stick above the Pacific Ocean. The largest island is less than 2 square miles, and all combined are less than 2.5, about a tenth the size of Manhattan.
Excuse me.
Despite its small size and extreme remoteness, Midway has a long and storied history, the remnants of which now rot among wildlife on the abandoned island. Join me as I venture through the history of Midway Atoll.
I'm just going to skip the song, because I don't want to get copyrighted again.
Midway Atoll, sometimes referred to as Midway Island, was discovered in 1859 by sealers and was claimed for the United States.
I hate sealing. I know it's like, I hate it. I saw a video as a kid where they were clubbing seals, and ever since then it's just, I don't know. I've hunted before. I butcher my own meat and slaughter my own animals here on my backyard farm. I don't know. Just seals, man. I don't know. I look at them like dogs almost. I don't know. Different strokes for different folks. I just don't like it.
Island was discovered in 1859 by sealers and was claimed for the United States in 1867, becoming the first Pacific island in U.S. territory. Unlike Hawaii, there were no indigenous inhabitants of the atoll, and it wasn't permanently occupied until 1903. Although it's best known as a military base, it was first permanently inhabited by workers of the Commercial Pacific Cable Company, who were working on a trans-Pacific communication cable. In 1908, Roosevelt stationed a few dozen Marines to protect the island and the company's infrastructure from Japanese poachers and squatters after numerous run-ins. The poachers were after seals that nested on the shores of the island, but Midway was most notably inhabited by thousands of albatrosses, large seabirds that live nearly entirely in the northwestern islands of the Hawaiian archipelago. From the beginning, the albatrosses became a symbol of Midway Island. In 1935, Midway became a regular stop for airplanes. Not military planes, but rather M-130 flying boats operated by the now-defunct Pan Am Airlines. The flying range of planes at this time was not enough to cross the Pacific, and Midway Atoll provided one of the many necessary stops to complete the route from San Francisco to China. At the time, this was the fastest commercial crossing of the Pacific. Pan Am constructed a luxury hotel on the island, formerly called the Pan Am Hotel, but nicknamed...
There's even a hotel there. I wonder if you could still go to this island. I mean, I'm sure he'll let us know. I'd love to go to an abandoned island like that. It must be so awesome to see, and it's got so much history there as well. It looks really cool.
Pan Am constructed a luxury hotel on the island, formerly called the Pan Am Hotel, but nicknamed the Gooneeville Lodge after the albatross birds that crowded the island. As aircraft technology developed and planes could fly further distances, the entire commercial infrastructure of Midway became obsolete.
There's a lot of buildings.
It was torn down in 1957, having been around for just 22 years. As World War II ramped up and the U.S. became increasingly wary of Japan, American leaders began to look to the island for its defense potential. It is about midway, hence the name, from the west coast of the U.S. to Tokyo,
Very original.
700 miles closer to Tokyo. Already a refueling stop for Navy and commercial aircraft alike, The islands were quickly militarized by an executive order under FDR. Airstrips were built along with a seaplane base and a myriad of support buildings, and anti-aircraft guns were installed along the edges of the islands. The Navy also restricted airspace around the base. The first attack on Midway came December 7, 1941, the same day as the much more publicized attack on Pearl Harbor. 2 months later, the island was bombarded by a Japanese submarine. Midway is best known, however, for the battle bearing its name, the Battle of Midway. On June 4th, 1942, 6 months after the
It's not ringing any bells. I've probably heard it mentioned before, but it's really not ringing any bells.
On June 4th, 1942, 6 months after the Pearl Harbor Day attack and 4 months after the submarine bombardment, a Japanese Imperial Navy fleet staged an attack on American vessels in the Pacific. Despite launching the attack, the Japanese Imperial fleet was quickly overrun by American forces. American cryptologists had partially decoded the Japanese's plan of attack.
I don't mean to laugh, but if you look at the birds just sitting there, they're sitting there like nothing's going on. There's a huge fire behind you, mate.
And surveillance planes had spotted the encroaching fleet the day before. 307 Americans were killed, about 1/10 of the Japanese loss. This was the first battle won by the Americans and was a devastating blow to the Japanese and an instrumental event in the downfall of Japan's control of the Pacific. Perhaps the greatest construction feat of Naval Air Station Midway was the enlarging of Sand Island after the Battle of Midway to over twice its natural size, allowing a second airfield to be built. The Navy kept people stationed here for the duration of the war, and the Naval Air Station was decommissioned 6 years later in 1950. Its decommissioning lasted less than a year as Midway became a support island for American forces in the Korean War. The population of the island during this era swelled to over 3,000 inhabitants. After World War II and throughout the Cold War, the island also served as a base for surveillance submarines. In 1978, with the threat of war decreasing and the introduction of satellites and military surveillance, Midway was downgraded to a naval air station. It closed for good in 1993 after the Cold War ended, a time at which less than 20 people remained on the island.
Flippin' heck, that must be so nice to have all that
Bill
space.
Clinton transferred control of the island to the Department of the Interior via executive order. Although public access was greatly limited, the Navy went through exhaustive efforts to mitigate the environmental damage they had done to the island. In 2000, Aloha Airlines began offering weekly service from Honolulu to Henderson Field, the civilian remnant of the Naval Air Station. There was at this point some ecotourism on the atoll, including a 100-person eco-village resort and 150 workers stationed just for the airport.
$500.
Aloha suspended service in 2002 after a dispute with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Midway Airport was closed for regular service in 2008 when the management company couldn't come to an agreement either. There was never a huge demand for tourist amenities on the island, and in fact the airlines had operated at a loss for years. Despite its white sand beaches and crystal clear water, Midway is remote and lacks the scenery of Hawaii. Its peak tourism era was in the 1930s when the Pan Am Hotel was in operation. Island wildlife today faces a challenge too: plastic. About 100 pounds of debris from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch wash up on Midway's shores every single week. Often small and particulate,
so many birds.
Plastic poses a threat to numerous species living on and around the island, including the signature albatrosses, whose organs can clog from plastic debris. Today there is no tourist access to the island, but about 40 people still live here on a rotational basis. These people include Fish and Wildlife Service employees, contractors, and volunteers. As of the 2010
That's so cool.
There are no people here who qualify as residents. It is one of my lifetime goals to visit Midway Atoll, but given all the hoops to jump through, for now I'll just have to rely on pictures and Google Maps. A small glimpse into the decrepit wildland of Midway Atoll. I have to give a shout out in this video to Forrest and Kim Starr, a husband and wife environmental consultant team. Over the years, they've provided some of the best photos of Midway Island and its abandonment. I've linked to their website in the description of this video.
Well, that's awesome. I can sort of understand why it's been like abandoned now and why you can't go there, because they've got to try and preserve the wildlife and all that. But such a shame, isn't it? The amount of damage that was done to it. Like, yeah, let's put a building here, a runway here, and now nobody gets to enjoy it. but oh, what a beautiful little island. I've never heard of it. That's so awesome. I love this stuff. I really, really love this stuff. And those people who live there are freaking lucky, aren't they? I think so anyway. Anyway, guys, I know it's a bit of a strange one. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.